There are seasons in life when silence once felt like the safest place to hide. Silence to protect yourself. Silence so you wouldn't have to face what you weren't ready to name. Silence to keep everything looking fine, at least on the surface. But Libra, if you are listening to these words right now, there's a good chance you've reached the moment when that silence no longer protects you. You keep moving through your days. You keep meeting your responsibilities. You smile when it's expected. You hold everything together in that familiar state of balance. And yet, somewhere inside, something keeps quietly knocking. Not loudly, not dramatically, just again and again, enough that you can no longer pretend you don't hear it. A person, a look, a memory, a feeling so familiar, it makes you pause and wonder why it's still here. You're not trying to think about them. In truth, you've tried very hard not to. But the thoughts keep finding you. They slip into the most ordinary moments. While you're driving under the fading evening light, when the room feels quieter than usual, when you pause at a familiar phrase, a passing scent, an old melody. And in those moments, in your own quiet way, you understand something clearly. This is not random. There are connections that don't need words to survive. They live through feeling, through a gentle but undeniable vibration. You may not speak it. You may not act on it. You may not allow it into your present life. But you cannot deny that it exists. And it's that quiet existence that no longer lets you feel at ease the way you once did. Libra, you are used to keeping everything in harmony. You understand the value of calm, of not stirring the water unless it's necessary. But now, you're beginning to recognize an important truth. Silence is not always the wisest choice. There are emotions that, if they aren't faced directly, will find other ways to speak. Through restlessness with no clear reason. Through sleepless nights. Through an emptiness that lingers even when everything on the outside looks full. This connection is not asking you to decide anything right now. It asks only one simple thing: honesty with yourself. To acknowledge that a thread exists. Without judging whether it's right or wrong. Without forcing yourself to understand where it's leading. Just pausing for a moment, breathing a little deeper, and allowing yourself to name the feeling with the same gentleness you so freely give to others, but sometimes forget to give yourself. Because when you stop running, when you allow light to touch the softest hidden corners of your heart, what happens is not chaos. What happens is clarity. Clarity about where you stand. Clarity about why your heart has felt unsettled. And from that clarity, something very natural begins to form. A subtle shift, a need to be understood, a desire to be heard, not only by someone else, but by yourself. And in that moment, when you stop resisting, your own emotions, when you allow them to exist without hiding them, the air around you seems to change. Everything grows quieter, deeper, as if life itself is inviting you to slow down, to look more closely, and to prepare for something that needs to be spoken with the honesty you've carried in your heart for a very long time. In that quiet space, you begin to notice something very subtle. There are emotions that don't need to be named out loud because they already exist, like an undercurrent flowing beneath your everyday thoughts and actions. You're not searching for them. You're not inviting them in. And yet, they are there, clear, real. There are moments when you're doing something completely ordinary, and suddenly, their image appears. Not loudly, not interrupting, just quietly standing there, like a familiar presence within your stream of thought. You don't know why you're thinking of them at that moment. There's no obvious reason for your heart to stir, so gently. But the feeling is distinct enough for you to know this isn't imagination. This is a connection moving at a very deep level. It's like walking into a room and sensing the atmosphere shift, even though no one says a word. You feel them even without physical presence. And in the most private moments, when you're alone with yourself, that feeling becomes even clearer. As if an invisible thread is lightly touching your mind, reminding you that somewhere, there is someone directing the same intensity of emotion toward you. Libra, you are more sensitive to energy than you realize. You pick up on what others haven't yet spoken. You read spaces. You read emotions. You even read silence. So when someone's energy keeps reaching you, you can't help but notice. It doesn't force itself. It doesn't invade, but it's persistent enough to make you wonder why you feel close to someone even when distance still exists. There are nights when everything has settled, when the outside world grows quiet, and you realize you're thinking of them in a very different way. Not with restlessness, not with surface-level desire, but with a sense of deep connection, as if two streams of thought are touching in silence. And somewhere, very possibly, they are feeling the same thing. No confirmation needed, no clear signals required, just a quiet resonance, gentle yet enduring. This doesn't make you lose control. If anything, it sharpens your awareness. You begin to observe your emotions more closely. You listen to yourself more deeply. You realize that some connections aren't meant to be judged too quickly, but to help you understand yourself more clearly, to understand why your heart responds this way, to understand what within you is being awakened. And within that awareness, something important slowly comes into focus. When two people sense each other at this energetic level, no one is truly passive. Both are contributing to the vibration, even without intention, even without words. It exists like a whisper between two souls, soft enough not to disrupt, yet strong enough to be impossible to ignore. And from that quiet presence, a very natural sense of waiting begins to form, not waiting for action, not waiting for a move, but waiting for truth to be touched through deeper understanding. You are not rushing anything to happen, and you are not forcing yourself to make a decision. Deep down, there's a very quiet part of you that already knows this connection is not something that simply comes and goes. It stays, in its own steady personal way, like a familiar mark that time has never been able to erase. There are emotions that don't explode or demand attention, yet they linger longer than any crashing wave. They move like underground water, flowing beneath the surface, silent, unshowy, but nourishing something vast and deep within you. This connection feels like that. So familiar you don't need to explain it, so close you don't need to try. And because of that, it unsettles you. Because logic has no easy answer for how someone can reach you in this way. You've tried creating distance. You've told yourself that if you stayed busier, if you focused on other things, the feeling would eventually fade. But the more you avoided it, the clearer it became. Some threads are not tied by circumstance or time, and so they cannot be cut by simply looking away. They exist through resonance, through emotional layers that touched long ago, even if the details of memory have softened. Libra, that sense of familiarity is not weakness. It's the imprint of a connection that was once very real. Perhaps in a distant past, or perhaps within this very lifetime, the two of you saw each other in moments of raw honesty. You don't need to remember the specifics. Your body remembers. Your heart remembers. And when paths cross again, no matter the circumstances, that feeling finds its way back. What makes this connection difficult to release is not fear of loss. It's the sense of incompletion, like a story interrupted before it could be finished, like a gaze that never reached its end, like something important that was never fully set down with complete honesty. That unfinished space creates a quiet pull, drawing you back not to relive the past, but to understand what bound you together so deeply in the first place. You begin to see that the more you force yourself to forget, the further you drift from yourself. Because this connection isn't only about the other person, it's about you, about the parts of you that only awaken in their presence, about emotions you believed you had moved beyond, only to realize they were simply resting. And once awakened, the only thing left to do is listen. In that listening, a strange calm begins to settle in. Not the calm of letting go, but the calm of acceptance. The understanding that some threads don't need to be cut, only seen for what they truly are. And when you allow yourself to look at this connection directly, without judgment, without haste, a deep sense of relief begins to surface. As if, at last, you've stopped running from something that was always meant to be part of your growth. But along with that sense of relief, a familiar reflex quietly returns. You slow yourself down. You turn inward. You begin to set boundaries, not to push anyone away, but but to keep yourself from being carried forward before you are truly ready. Libra has always known how to keep things balanced, just enough care, just enough politeness, just enough presence to avoid hurting anyone, yet just enough distance to avoid losing control. You speak more gently. You choose your words with greater care. You leave pauses in conversations that only you fully understand. To others, this may look like calm, but for you, it is a tremendous effort to keep your emotions from spilling over. There are moments when you notice you are trying to appear more composed than necessary. You smile at the right time. You stop at the right moment. You pull back just before things feel too close. Not because you don't want to move forward, but because you understand the power of this emotion. You know that once you speak, once you allow yourself to be fully honest, that door will not close easily. And that realization is both inviting and unsettling. You learned long ago how to be strong by holding yourself together. You've lived through periods when emotion carried you too far, and it took a long time to find your balance again. So this time, you choose caution. You choose to remain within familiar safety. You tell yourself that staying silent a little longer won't hurt, that waiting a little longer will bring clarity. But deep inside, you also feel a subtle tension beginning to form, like a cord pulled just tight enough, not snapping, but no longer relaxed. You know you are restraining yourself, and you also know that this restraint cannot last forever. Because emotions don't disappear when they are compressed. They simply wait for the right moment to breathe. There are moments when you question whether the coolness you project is truly what you want, or merely a coat meant to cover a very human fear. The fear of disrupting what feels stable, the fear of facing a choice, the fear that once you cross a certain line, you won't be able to return to the way things were before. And within that fear, you continue to hold yourself back. You continue to move slowly. You continue to observe. What you may not yet realize is that this restraint is also teaching you something important. It shows you how much you've grown. It shows you that you no longer act from impulse, but from awareness. And at the same time, it quietly places a question before you. A question that doesn't demand an answer right now, but one that grows clearer with time. Are you holding yourself back to protect your heart, or to postpone a truth you know you will eventually have to face? And as that question quietly stays with you, without demanding an answer right away, you begin to realize something important. You are no longer the only one carrying this feeling. On the other side of the silence, there is someone still standing there, not retreating, not turning away, not pretending that everything is already over. You can sense it clearly, even though they don't express it with grand words. It lives in the way they remember you, in their quiet patience, in the space they continue to hold for you in their world, even when you're unsure whether you should step into it or not. Some people see distance and choose to let go, taking it as a sign to pull back. But this person is different. They stay, not out of attachment, but out of a quiet belief that this connection has not yet reached its ending. Libra, not everyone has the patience to remain in such an uncertain space. Not everyone has the sincerity to offer a gentle presence, without pressure, without demands, simply waiting for truth to speak on its own. You may not see them appear loudly, but you feel their direction toward you. A gaze that lingers a little longer than usual, a care that does not fade with time, a sense that even when you turn away, they still know exactly where you live in their heart. This can leave you feeling unsettled, because when someone refuses to let go, you are forced to face a deeper question about yourself. No longer a question of what they want, but a question of how ready you are, ready to be seen, ready to be loved in a more mature way, ready to step beyond the safe space you've built so carefully. There is a profound difference between being held back and being waited for. And deep within, you know exactly which one you are experiencing. This person is not trying to keep you through fear or pressure. They are simply refusing to pretend that their feelings have disappeared. They allow the feeling to exist. They live alongside it. And they trust that if this connection truly matters, it will find its own way forward. That creates a very particular kind of energy. Not loud, but steady. Not dramatic, but deep. An energy that makes it hard to turn away because you can feel the sincerity within it. And in the moment you realize you no longer need to brace yourself against this feeling, something unexpectedly gentle begins to spread. Not weakness, but permission. Permission for things to exist exactly as they are. You begin to understand that someone not wanting to let go is not always a burden. Sometimes it is a reminder that you are worthy of patience, of unselfish care, of a connection that does not disappear simply because silence appears. And when you allow yourself to see it that way, without rushing a decision, without making promises, your heart softens just a little, enough to sense the warmth waiting quietly ahead. In that softness, there is no urgency, only a clear knowing that this is not over yet, that this connection is still alive, still breathing, still waiting for a moment honest enough to be brought fully into the light. And as you stand still within that awareness, listening to your own heartbeat, you begin to see that some encounters are not meant to be closed in haste, but to teach you how to walk toward truth with greater courage and greater gentleness toward yourself. And as you stand still within that awareness, listening to the rhythm of your own heartbeat, one thing becomes unmistakably clear. Not through logic, but through something deeply human. This silence has fulfilled its purpose. It gave you time. It allowed you to reflect. It protected you long enough. But now, if everything remains held inside, that same silence begins to feel heavy. Some emotions, when compressed for too long, do not disappear. They look for other ways out, through eyes that avoid meeting, through half-finished sentences, through the weight you feel when the two of you are close, yet never reach what truly matters. And then, at some point, you realize you can no longer pretend that everything is fine. Not because anyone is forcing you, but because your heart is tired of holding what longs to be spoken. That conversation does not arrive like a storm. It comes quietly. It may begin with a question that seems simple on the surface, with a pause that lingers just a bit longer than usual, with a look that doesn't rush away. But the moment the first words are spoken, you know this is not casual exchange, not politeness, not courtesy, not an effort to please. This is the moment when both of you bring your truth forward and place it into the shared space with vulnerability and courage. Libra, this kind of conversation can make your heart race and at the same time allow you to breathe more deeply. Because for the first time in a long while, you no longer have to guess. You no longer have to interpret. You no longer have to wonder whether you've been imagining too much. What is spoken is not meant to end things immediately, but to be understood for what it truly is. There may be silences between the words, moments when you feel the very human tremble in both of your voices. Yet those pauses carry more meaning than any perfectly crafted answer. They show that this conversation is not shallow, that every word is being chosen carefully, not out of fear, but out of respect for what is being placed between you. The most important part of this conversation is not where it leads, but who you allow yourself to be within it. Present, unprotected, unhidden, not trying to maintain the flawless balance you've always carried, but simply a human being speaking honestly, wanting to be seen, wanting to be heard. And when you allow yourself that, you also offer the other person the space to do the same. Some relationships only truly change when truth is spoken, even when that truth is still unfinished. Because change does not come from resolving everything at once, but from no longer carrying emotion alone. From the moment two people stand together in the light of sincerity, even if that light is soft, even if it is faint, yet bright enough to see each other more clearly. And when that conversation takes place, regardless of the outcome, you notice something deeply valuable. You are no longer trapped in vague waiting, no longer held by what remained unsaid. You have taken a significant step in your journey of growth. Not loud, not dramatic, but deep enough to change how you see yourself and how you step into future connections. Within that honesty, a very real feeling begins to spread. Not instant certainty, but the relief of finally choosing to face what is true. And from that relief, a new space opens. A space where nothing is suppressed, where emotion is allowed to breathe, where the path ahead, even without clear shape, begins to reveal itself with a sincerity you have been waiting for a very long time. And within that new space, once the words have been placed down, once truth is no longer hidden behind silence or assumption, you begin to feel something different. This resonance does not fade like a passing wave. It does not cool down once the story has been spoken. Instead, it grows clearer, steadier, as if, at last, you are seeing the true shape of a feeling you have been carrying for a very long time. Because if this were only desire, it would not have stayed this long. If it were only fleeting attraction, it would not have had the patience to move through layers of silence, through moments of avoidance, through every time you held yourself back. What exists here runs much deeper. It lives in the way the two of you listen to each other, and how every word is spoken with intention. In the quiet sense of safety that arrives when you realize you don't have to prove anything. You don't have to perform. You don't have to be anything other than who you are. Libra, there is a kind of feeling air that isn't loud, that doesn't burn fiercely, yet has the power to warm you for a very long time. It doesn't cause you to lose control. It makes you want to become a better version of yourself, to treat your emotions with kindness, to build rather than simply react. And through that understanding, you see clearly now that this is not just a stirring of the heart, but a resonance between two people who are standing in a more mature chapter of life. You sense the care in its truest form, unannounced, unexaggerated. It shows in the way they look at you when you speak what is difficult, in the patience they offer when you need time, in the desire to walk beside you, not to possess you. And somewhere, very quietly, a new question begins to form, no longer shaped by fear, but by a measured sense of hope. If both of you are brave enough, could this connection become a place to return to? What is most beautiful in this moment is that you are no longer being swept away by raw emotion, alone. You see both the light and the places that still need care. You understand that moving into a new chapter requires more than feeling. It requires presence. It requires responsibility for your emotions and for theirs. And what matters most is that the thought no longer frightens you the way it once did. You no longer shrink at the idea of building something with depth. You may not be ready to speak a promise. You may not want to name everything just yet. But within you, a door has opened. Not to rush through, but to allow possibility to exist. The possibility that this feeling can grow with time, that it can be nurtured through honesty, that it can offer a form of happiness that is quiet, yet enduring. And as you allow yourself to stand within that feeling, without pressure, without escape, you begin to understand something essential. This is no longer a story of desire or fleeting attraction. This is a story of two people seeing each other at a deeply real level of life. A place where emotion does not need to burn brightly to prove its worth. Where connection is measured by presence, by the willingness to continue walking forward together, slowly, steadily, towards something that carries meaning for both of you. And when all of that has finally been touched, when emotion is no longer pushed away or held too tightly, you find yourself standing in a very different place. No longer caught between assumptions, no longer trapped in waiting for someone else to decide for you. You stand within yourself, and for the first time in a long while, you know with clarity that after that conversation, whether it was gentle or deep, short or long, everything has changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, but enough to know you cannot return to the way you felt before. Libra, this is not the moment to rush into choosing love or choosing to walk away. This is the moment to recognize how much you've grown in the way you understand emotion. You no longer love from lack. You no longer stay from fear of loss. And you no longer leave just to keep things safe. You begin to see that the true choice is not about holding on or letting go, but about whether you are being honest with yourself. There are paths that lead to continuing forward together. There are paths that lead to a gentle ending. And there are paths that exist only to teach you a profound lesson about your own worth. No path is wrong, only paths that align with the person you are becoming. And what is most beautiful here is that you are no longer chasing answers from anyone else. You listen to yourself, slowly, deeply, with the respect you have always deserved. Your choice may surprise others. It may not look like what was once expected. But when you choose from inner peace, That choice carries no regret, because peace is not the absence of feeling. It is the absence of self-betrayal in order to satisfy circumstances. Peace is knowing why you stay, and also knowing why, if needed, you can walk away without resentment. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. You don't need to over-explain. Your life is not a version that requires approval. It is a deeply personal journey where every connection arrives to reflect where you stand in your own growth. And this connection, whether it continues or comes to rest, has already fulfilled an important role. It helped you touch your truth. It helped you understand that your heart is not weak, but learning how to love with awareness. When you choose what brings you peace, you lose nothing. You simply place everything where it truly belongs. And from that place, you move forward lighter, clearer, no longer pulled backward by unspoken words or unacknowledged emotion. You walk on with trust, knowing that whatever is meant for you, whether a relationship or a new chapter, will find its way to stay. Not through force, not through holding on, but through a natural alignment. And in that deep quiet, you recognize one final truth. Simple, yet powerful. You have always had the choice. Life is not pushing you forward. It is waiting for you to step toward it. And when you walk from a place of peace, the road ahead, even without a clear shape, will open in the gentlest way, meant just for you.